1 in 5 organizations have had a security incident that's been linked to AI-generated code.
We're generating code at 3x, 4x the pace of before. There's less control or less in-depth knowledge about what you're vibe coding. It's basically too much for a human to review everything very carefully. It's never been as easy to secure something, even if you're not a security expert.
AI is writing production code at a speed no security team can manually review. The proposed fix is AI that reviews AI-generated code. But if AI is creating vulnerabilities faster than humans can process them, we're now using AI to catch those vulnerabilities. Are we actually solving the problem? This guy answers the tough questions. Meet Roland Delrue, co-founder and COO of Aikido Security, Europe's fastest ever cybersecurity unicorn, reaching $1 billion valuation in under 3 years. AI Cyber Podcast met up with Roland at RSA to discuss what types of vulnerabilities AI-generated code is actually producing, why existing tools like SAST and software composition analysis failed to solve the AppSec backlog problem before AI made it worse. What happens when AI finds a vulnerability, fixes it, nobody fully reviews the remediation, and it still causes a breach? The idea that systems should continuously test, validate, and fix themselves as they are built.
When we pentest applications, we launch anywhere between 60 and 600 agents. It's a little bit fighting fire with fire. If the pace of producing code and producing vulnerabilities is 3x because of AI and LLMs, the solution is also partially lying in using LLMs to counter that and keep up.
Hi, Roland. Welcome to AI Cyber Podcast.
Hello.
Yes, so we are right now at RSAC, and you're getting to watch this later on, but yes, we are rocking it here at RSAC in San Francisco, and I have Roland here with me from Aikido. And we're going to be chatting about a whole lot of stuff. Let's unpack.
Yes, let's
So
start.
what have you been up to, Roland?
The latest, yesterday, we announced our direct integration in Lovable.
Okay.
So when people are vibe coding away, if you're building a little app and some data will enter that and you might have some customers, you might want to have that security tested or pen tested. Pen tested is an abbreviation for penetration testing for people that might not know. And so right now we have a button directly in Lovable. So once you publish your app, you can have the Aikido agents try to attack it from all different sides to make sure it's protected and safe and secure.
That's fantastic. So let's say someone has just bumped into this chat. Why should they sit around and watch us ramble on about security?
Oh, because I think if you're into vibe coding and if you're maybe not a developer, there's a lot of democratization happening. By democratization, I mean it's been never as easy to code something, even if you're not a developer. And similarly, it's never been as easy to secure something, even if you're not a security expert. And so I guess we'll be talking a little bit about that today, but we can get into some more nitty-gritty agentic stuff and vulnerabilities and CVEs and all of that cyber things.
So I like the fact that you said it's never been easier to secure stuff. That is the part I struggle with, because with many democratization that's happening, security doesn't seem to be bundled in. And I saw this stat somewhere, and it says that 1 in 5 organizations have had a security incident, very serious one, that's been linked to AI-generated code. And I'd like you to talk to us about the type of vulnerabilities that you're currently seeing driving this sort of numbers that we're seeing.
The types of vulnerabilities are not that different or that new. Also, LLM agents are trained on what humans have been doing, right? They've been trained on all of the past stuff, so they will make very similar mistakes. Sure, there's some small trends where they tend to gravitate a little bit more towards certain types of vulnerabilities, but they're not new as such. They will still do SQL injection, or they will still allow for some cross-site scripting or all of that. The thing is more that we're generating code at 3x, 4x the pace of before. We also notice that a lot of the PRs or the pull requests, the piece of code that are being made are a lot more bloated, if you will. They're a lot larger. And so it's that sheer speed and just tapping away and entering away. There's less control or less in-depth knowledge about what you're vibe coding, because it's basically too much for a human to also review everything very carefully. And so that rate, and then typically that gets bolted on top of existing code or existing legacy code, which on its own can lead to certain network effects or supply chain effects. So yeah.
I really like that you mentioned that it's too much for a human. Typically, security review is done by security code review. And teams are usually done by humans. So my next question is, with AI-generated code, these tools writing code really fast, security review processes cannot keep up. And the proposed fix is AI-assisted security review, which you've signposted that you're currently helping through Lovable. Why isn't that just the same problem one layer up?
It's a little bit fighting fire with fire, if you will, or if the pace of producing code and producing vulnerabilities, therefore, is 3x because of AI and LLMs, then the solution is also partially lying in using LLMs to counter that and keep up with that speed. Luckily, we can do so. It seems to be very effective.
Tell me about the effectiveness.
The comparison that you can sometimes make is if, let's say I'm the mayor of the city of San Francisco and I want to increase security, like it's impossible to put a police officer at every building or inside every building because there's limited resources, there's limited people, all of these people need training. But in the world of agents, you can create infinite agents, if you will. So if those were to be virtual police officers, or let's say it was the digital world, I could spin up a police officer in every building. And that's something new to go at that scale. So when we pen test applications, we launch anywhere between 60 and 600 agents all at the same time at your application. And if you were to replicate it with humans, it's not possible to operate at that scale. And also at the pace, they're a lot faster.
Okay, so when they find the vulnerabilities, do they try to exploit them? And if they try to exploit them, does Aikido also have like suggested fixes?
Yes, we have other agents for that. So it's a very meta world. We have attacker agents, but then we also have fixing agents that will remediate the findings. And once they're remediated, we have retest agents that will confirm that the fix was properly made, and they will try to attack it again. They will try to bypass the fix. And then if they were not able to exploit it again, then we have a secure patch.
I think you should double down on talking about that. And I'm saying that because we need to really signpost the fact that fixes could happen, and they could happen in such a way that they could still be bypassed or introduce new vulnerabilities. So I want you to double down on that fix being actually re-pen tested to double check.
It's basically a mimic of a human pen test, right? Like if a human spends about a week or 2 humans, they will find issues, then the developers or the company will fix them. And then the pen tester will retest them for the final report. So it's kind of that flow that is being replicated with the agents. Like you have the attacking agents, remediation agents, and then the retest agents. The retest agents are specifically designed to try to find all kinds of bypasses. They're also kind of attacker agents, but their instructions are a lot different than the ones that initially find it. And we've actually used that as well for other use cases. For example, for bug bounty validation, or a lot of companies have a disclosure program where vulnerabilities can be submitted and stuff, and bug bounties. And those retest agents are validating these reports, like, is this real?
Triaging them.
Yeah, triaging them. And so that's a fun new use case that we uncovered through those retest agents.
Yeah, I like that use case. Can you share one more?
Another use case that we discovered, we have discovered that we can actually go a lot more shift left, because the difference between human pen testers and agentic pen testers is that agentic ones can take the code base into account. They can actually live read and understand. They're very good at reading code. They're very good at making code as well. When we do pen tests, we give you an option to do a white box pen test, which then takes that code into account. And so now the agents can be a lot more effective, and it's an unfair advantage compared to humans who cannot live read code at the same time. And so that's an extra use case that we uncovered. But then also, because it can read code, you can do a little bit more shift left. Typically, a pen test now happens when things are on production or near production or very close to the release at the end.
Exactly.
But if you can give them access to the code base, you can actually have those agents get at it a lot sooner. And then you have that typical shift left of better find it early, fix it early before it makes it into production.
Fantastic. So I like the fact that you mentioned code bases and access to code bases. I'm thinking of that as a code base becoming some sort of context, right? Yes. So bearing that in mind, what context does your tooling have that a generic vulnerability scanner does not have?
What we see in general is that the traditional code scanners, or often referred to as static code analyzers, they're kind of like rule checkers almost, and they will go over the code base almost kind of line by line, so to say, versus agents and LLMs can look at more holistically, and they can understand the logic behind the code, the business logic. That's why there's such a big excitement around AI SAST. So we have the traditional SAST. SAST stands for Static Application Security Testing. And now with the AI SAST, there's a whole new range of vulnerabilities that we can uncover there because they now have that extra context or can interpret that extra context.
Absolutely. And I like that this will really help with the backlog that we know that's a problem in AppSec. Yeah?
Yes, it definitely helps. A lot of these things are moving to hybrid. It's not that agents or LLMs are better at everything. If we go back to the static code, for example, we use a scanner that has taint tracking that can build up the whole tree of where the functions are calling into and so on. And so it is very effective in locating certain types of vulnerabilities where LLMs, they would either never find it or they would take them hours and therefore also costly to find them. So, but then LLMs are better at other things, and they can find more of these business logic type of vulnerabilities, like a cross-tenant leakage or an IDOR BOLA type of
which were like a
vulnerability.
proper pain.
Yeah, and so we're moving to more of that hybrid world. So maybe a last thing, and now we're getting very deep compared to the vibe coding in the beginning. So even what we do is when the static scanner finds something, we will have it be triaged and confirmed by a triaging agent, actually. So it's the combination of a deterministic scanner, then verified and triaged by agents. And then we also have agent-first scanners, so it's becoming like a best of both worlds, and we're going towards this hybrid thing.
I like that you're using this approach. And it's important to really signpost that because agentic is becoming a buzzword. Where you're seeing AI even being used in use cases that are not necessary. So I like that you're using AI for where its strengths, can be maximized versus just throwing the tool around. And
the driver for that is also cost, because like even if you can do it agentic, like it can sometimes take minutes or hours, and therefore a lot of AI tokens. And we've seen that with a lot of customers. Like, yeah, we've built this AI flow, and we were like, you can just do it with that traditional thing. It will be done in a fraction of a second. It will not cost you money. But people now tend to, like, I guess, over experiment, or like they're getting so excited about agents that they're sometimes forgetting that for certain things you don't
need. Thank you for that honesty. I know that developers are the ones who traditionally mostly directly interact with AI code generation tools. Aside Lovable, is there any other one that you're currently integrated with?
Lovable is the first one that we integrated with, that we announced yesterday. I personally divvy them up a little bit in two categories. On the one hand, you have like the IDEs and the CLIs, so like the cursors, the windsurfs of this world, and the Claude codes. But there you still have a developer behind the driving wheel, and there you're still like hooking into more of a traditional software development lifecycle, versus the Lovables of this world. They're often not developers, and they're not making PRs to be merged in a Git system, right? They just go pretty much straight to production.
Yes.
And so that's like a second category of, or two flavors of vibe coding, if you will. But I think Aikido is uniquely positioned to be on both sides.
But how do you build security tooling that developers wouldn't necessarily find a route around or work around and would actually use them?
I don't think that question is related that much to AI. Like, that's an older problem in a way, that developers have always, as long as time or as long as programming has been around, they just want to ship code and build products.
Exactly.
It's just like when you build a house, and you want to live in it and you want to enter the door. You don't want to like think about the security, right? And sure, we've grown accustomed that you have locks on your doors and a gate and a camera system. And similarly in coding and development, we've gotten used to other things, but still, first and foremost, we want to ship features, and we expect security just to be there. Unfortunately, it's not always there by default, and it does require some effort. And we've been at this for the last decades to train developers, give them guardrails, give them instructions. A lot of that is often driven through compliance as well, where your ISO or your SOC 2 or your PCI, whatever industry you're in, will demand that happens, and that checks are happening and that training is happening. But I do think with AI, it has now become a lot easier to do that, or you don't have to undergo heavy training anymore, or sometimes it feels like you need to do a PhD in cybersecurity to understand what is a path traversal attack and why is it dangerous and how do I fix it, and there's that learning curve. But now with the agents, it can be democratized and made a lot more easy. So that is a good improvement or
Fantastic. I'd like us to just talk about tech debt, right?
Yeah.
I know that most organizations are not starting from zero, right?
Yes.
Unlike people who have vibe coding tools.
Yes.
So they have existing code bases, existing AppSec pipelines, for example, and existing debt. So where does Aikido fit into that reality?
Yes, I think that's a great point to make. There's a lot of old code, and if the old code is still running, that means that that code is making money. Because if that code or that code base were not to be a vital part of a vital business activity, it would have probably been eradicated. Great examples of that would be COBOL. It's a very old language. It's in every bank. It's a very deeply rooted language. It's probably not going to disappear anytime soon, and it comes with a lot of legacy as well. And so you're right. I think that that's still a phase we're entering, I guess, as we speak. And it's now what, March 2026. If we're here again next year, 2027, that conversation will already have evolved a lot. But there's a lot to do now about refactoring in general. And so what does that have to do with Aikido? I think where we are going as a first step is self-securing software, where you have agents finding it, you have agents fixing it, you have agents retesting it, and you can put that on an autopilot, and you're getting really, really close into that self-securing world. But when you say security vulnerabilities and remediating them is also a way of maintaining your code. The vulnerability was typically not meant to be there or was not there by design or malicious intent. It's just the code was written in a way that it unfortunately allows for a certain type of vulnerability. And when you clean that up, so to say, you've made better code. And so that's why about a year ago with Aikido, we also went into code quality.
Okay.
If we go back to the static code analysis, you can analyze code for security, but you can also inspect it for quality. And they're like two sides of the same coin. Also, when you're upgrading packages in general, whether it's an open source package or a framework that you're using or a language or a container, typically when you upgrade, just like you upgrade your phone, it's a mixture of security improvements, but also just like stability improvements and overall improvements. And so that's why we went into the code quality, because we feel like after self-securing software, probably the step after that is self-maintaining software, and then security being a subcategory of maintaining code. And that's when you're getting into the world of legacy. And so it's going to be very interesting, because that's where you're not only in the cyber world anymore, you're just in the software world in general. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how startups and existing incumbents and all of these companies will collide towards that self-maintaining software. Yeah.
I really took interest into your self-securing software that you just introduced into the conversation. And for me, I have it here as AI found it and AI fixed it. And I have it as a loop, and it sounds efficient, right? But what is the risk of a remediation applied by an AI system that the security team does not fully review?
As a company, you have standards, right? And you can apply those standards also to the agents, like the level of inspection or checking or reviewing that you would expect from an expert human. You can set a similar bar or even a higher bar for the agents. Or if you're in a particular industry, let's say health tech, and you need to get FDA approved and get HIPAA compliant and all of that stuff, like you can make sure that the attacker agents or the locating agents, the fixing agents, comply and perform all the checks that are required for that standard, if you will. I don't think there's an extra risk. So I think there's more risk on the agents going, I don't know, perhaps rogue in a certain way. But if they're security is sometimes referred to as an onion. Like you have one layer, and if you get through the one layer, there should be a next layer and another layer. So even the chance of something going wrong with the agent review are probably lower than chance going something wrong with a human review. But we set a higher bar for agents. It's a little bit like self-driving cars. They're like 50 times more safe than human drivers. If we were to all move to self-driving cars, there would be a lot less people dying on the streets in traffic. But the moment that one person dies because of a self-driving car, the world is on fire. Yeah. And so the bar of getting to that zero, I'll make a last comparison. I think when people went to the moon, NASA had to give a guarantee of 90% that it would succeed. but it's like this 2080 rule a bit. And then Congress or the president, or I don't remember exactly, don't quote me on the details of the percentages, but they said, hey, what if we want to go to 95%? And they apparently said something like, well, what it took to get from 0 to 90, that effort, it would take the same effort to go from 90 to
It's
95,
95.
because like diminishing returns. And so I think right now what's happening is that there's a very, very high bar for these agents, and rightfully so. And we're entering that diminishing returns world right now. And I just think whatever we had in place for humans as a bar in general, or compliance as a bar in general, that should be the minimum, and we should have the same fallbacks and safe stops and whatever for if and when humans screwed it up or didn't do a good job.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to basically tell me how your tool will handle a situation where the vulnerability that is found is technically reachable, right? But the organization has accepted the risk and accelerated it. Does the tool respect that boundary?
It can. Just like in a house, you have a gate and a camera system, and like sometimes you can accept a certain risk because you know it will be stopped by a firewall, like a web app firewall or something, and then you're fixing or avoiding the problem in a different place with a different method, if you will. That is being context aware, and it's never been as easy. Or agents and LLMs in general are very good at taking that context into account, and so I think that's a very exciting move that is happening in the industry, where before you had very siloed products. You had like a code scanner and an IDE scanner, and then perhaps from a different vendor a container scanning, and then perhaps from a different vendor an API fuzzer scanner, and then from again another vendor. And so you can see a trend in the industry, and with Aikido, we're definitely one of them. We're trying to complete that entire software development lifecycle so that we can be context aware and the agents can be context aware, that if they see something in one place, that they can see in the other place, like, oh, yes or no, it's not exploitable here. And it was too hard before to like connect all these systems together. There's companies that have tried it in the past and partially succeeded at like bringing all the tooling into one and then connecting all the dots. But doing that in a deterministic way or in a traditional way, it's super hard, especially if you do that at scale or at enterprise. But agents are really good at finding their way in a disorganized or complex situation, right?
Fantastic. So I know you're selling to engineering teams and not to security teams per se.
That's not true. We sell a lot to engineering teams, and engineers are often an end user, but we definitely also sell, or the budget or the initiative very often comes from a cyber team. What is maybe true is that if we sell to a small startup, they often don't have a cyber team yet. And so then there you're selling to an engineering team. For example, Revolut Bank is one of our customers. I can assure you, there's a security team there. They're tightly in control over what is happening there. And you're not selling just to the engineers just like that. You're selling to the security team.
Fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
So just to wrap this up, say in 2 to 3 years, what does the role of human security engineer or a human security engineer look like in a software organization, one that maybe has adopted AI generated code and AI assisted security review?
It's indeed hard to predict. What I've seen is if you give the best engineers access to these very, very powerful tools, they tend to become even more effective and more productive. I've also seen it happen the other way around, that if you give it to a really, really junior developer that isn't maybe as trained in security performance and all of that, that giving them access to a Gen AI doesn't necessarily make them a whole lot better. Like, it can also sometimes amplify their juniorness, if you will. And sure, you can put some guardrails on it. It's going to be interesting to see, because on the other end, then you have people that weren't even never developing, becoming a developer. So it's going to be, the range is definitely expanding in all directions. The bar has lowered for the entry, but I think if you give it to the smartest people, the most powerful tools, there's an uplift there on the top side as well. One thing is for sure is that we're going to be producing a lot of lines of code altogether in the world. That's one thing, yeah.
So to close out, what can we look forward to from Aikido in the next 2 to 3 months, in the next 5 months?
One of the things that I'm personally most excited about, next to the pen testing and the lovable integration, which is really, really cool, is the continuous pen testing. Because traditionally, when you do pen test with humans, humans are expensive and you hire a firm. You cannot have that firm in there every day of the year. So typically you do it once a year or maybe a couple of times a year. But with the agents, kind of like the example that I was giving with the police officers, you can have as many as you want and they can work day and night and in the weekend. And so you can pen test basically every release. Where we're moving towards is like pen testing every PR that is happening. So I'm very excited about that one.
That would be so cool. Please,
Yes.
please bump. That would be so cool. And I saw a post from a friend of mine and he said, agents cannot pause to take a pause. We need continuous, check-in and ensuring that things are okay. So yes, I'm very excited to hear that you have continuous checks in place and to ensure that agents don't go rogue.
I have a second one. The continuous pen testing, we just launched that. It's called Aikido Infinite. But the second thing that is still in the works is Aikido Endpoint. And basically, we're building a traditional agent, not an AI agent, that can sit on the developer laptop. Because there's a lot happening on the machine of the developer. Because they're vibe coding away. There's some Claude stuff, some Codex stuff, some whatever stuff happening. They might be using some Gen AI IDE. They're installing IDE plugins, they're installing Chrome extensions. And typically the machines of the developers are not completely locked.
They're a treasure trove.
Yeah, they're a treasure trove. They're full of very interesting goodies. Like, if you and I work for a very regulated company, your and my laptop will be like very shut down. We won't be able to install anything, do anything.
Yes.
But for developers, it's very hard to really shut them down because they're developing and they need to try out a lot of things, download a lot of things, do a lot of things. And so within that freedom to operate, now supercharged by power tools, it's very hard to monitor. And we're building an endpoint security that is going to monitor the Chrome extensions, the IDE plugins, the LLM usage, what models are they using, what are those models
What
putting
packages,
out.
what packages.
And then it'll be very interesting to put that in that flow because then we can see, oh, maybe the Anthropic models were more secure or were generating code with less vulnerabilities down the line. I'm not taking preference here on a model. They're evolving too quickly. But there's a lot of interesting things that we can do on monitoring and securing that laptop device. And so by this time next year, that will have launched. And
I am personally very excited about that because last year I gave a talk about just what you're saying. My talk was titled How Your Engineering Team is Being Attacked. It's not what you think. And I laid out a lot of the ways that the engineering teams, their laptops are literally littered with identity assets, littered with all of the assets. So just getting in, can have cascading effects down the pipeline. So I'm very excited that you're doing something about it.
Some customers even having these like remote desktops. So because that they're so scared of having too much stuff on the laptop itself that they're making these virtual environments for the developers to go and code and do their thing in there. So you can see it's not a solved problem yet. So we want to do something for that.
Thank you so much, Roland, for giving us your time in the middle of the RSAC hustle and bustle.
No, it's been a calm 30 minutes, but I'll go back to my exploding phone after this.
Thank you so much
Yes.
for being on the
Thank you.
podcast.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.